Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I want to focus on how I created this ambient soundscape in VCV Rack 2. We will go through all the channels of this patch, and by the end of the video I hope you'll have an understanding of what my thought process was and how I created each of the voices I used. I will make this patch available for download in the description, so feel free to study it on your own and use it in one of your tracks. All the modules I used are free to download as well. Okay, so let's have a look at each of the voices by soloing the channels one after another and analyzing what I did. So starting with the first channel, we can hear a rings voice in 4-voice polyphony mode and sympathetic string mode. It is sequenced by a marbles sequencer, which I sent to a quantizer module. I know you can use custom scales in your marbles, but I'm not sure how to do it in software. So the workaround I used is just using a separate quantizer module, which I programmed to an F minor scale. And then I used this volt per octave information to trigger rings. I also sent rings to a stereo strip module, which is the new collaboration between Befaco and DivKit. I just wanted to try the module and see if I maybe want it in hardware. So I just used it quite often in this patch, and what I did on this channel is get rid of some low end and mid bands, and after that I sent it to the mixer. The second channel is the same voice as in channel 1, but with some reverb effect on it. For that I used Valet's Plateau reverb because I think it's a very beautiful reverb, which gives you these nice, lush and relaxing reverbs. In this particular channel I increased the size and decay quite a bit, and I'm also using only the wet signal, so no dry sound, so just the wet signal. And I also increased the mod depth to give it some modulation and not make it as static. And that's it. After that it is sent straight to the mixer to channel 2. Heading over to channel 3, we can hear the Simpliciter module, which is a very nice sampler module in VCV Rack. I also used the simpler tape control expander, which adds this nice tape simulation. So the in and output is quite simple. I just used the main out of the whole mix and sent it to the Simpliciter. I then recorded a 1-minute loop and just play back this loop. So I like to play it backwards and twice the speed, which gives it this very nice feeling in my opinion. I then processed it a bit further by using some tape compression emulation and also using another stereo strip module. What I did there is not only I reduced the low and mid bands, but also used some pan CV to just give it some modulation in panning, so it just feels a bit nicer in the stereo field. And I also used another reverb channel, this time not in full wet, but still having some dry signal and not too much decay on this one. The fourth channel is Mutable Instruments Clouds, which is in granular mode and pitched up by 2 octaves. It uses the dry ring signal. It's triggered by an inverted clock channel of marbles, and I also used some basic LFO modulation to give it some liveliness. And what I also did is add another stereo strip module to add some CV modulation for panning, and also reduce low information, and then send it back to the mixer. The fifth channel is a delay module. It's in ping pong delay mode. I increased the delay quite a bit, and I'm also using a combined clock information to trigger the loop gate input. The signal I'm using is channel 1 of marbles inverted, as well as the second channel divided by 9, which I'm coming to in a second, but I'm also using this clock to then combine both gates with an AND logic and then triggering the loop gate input. After the delay module, I'm using Chow tape degrade to give it some nice tape feeling, and also using some tape compression and then sending it to the mixer. The next channel is Mutable Instruments Plats, which is in wave shaping oscillator mode. And here I used a trick that I'm also using quite a lot in my hardware modular, which is using the same sequence that I use for the lead synthesizer, but dividing it and using a sample and hold module to get divisions of the clock, and only using a fraction of the sequence information for the sub-bass sequencing. So what I did here is I used the same trigger information and sending it to a clock divider, which is dividing it by 9, and then sending this clock to a sample and hold module, which receives the quantized information of marbles. And then by using this divided clock, we get every 9th pitch information, which we then send to a slew limiter to give it some nice glide effect, and then using this information to modulate the Plats oscillator, which is then sent to a simple low pass filter to cut off some high end, and then sent to the mixer. And by using this technique, we can limit ourselves to one sequencer, but still have some nice pitch information for both channels that doesn't really repeat itself that often, so it stays interesting. And by using this technique on marbles and increasing the jitter, it's also not a very static clock, so it doesn't feel as repetitive as it would feel if you'd use just a very straight on clock. The last channel is another clouds emulation. As the input signal, I'm using the 6th channel after the filter, so we get the sub-bass information and then pitch it up by an octave, and also using the same freeze trigger we used earlier, which then results in this nice ambient soundscape. To add some modulation, I used another stereo strip module, cut some low end and added some panning modulation, and after that sending it to the mixer. On the master, I'm using another Chow tape emulation just to add some small amount of saturation and bias to give it a little bit more tape feeling, and then sending it to the audio interface. So yeah, that's the patch. I really like it because by using some LFO modulation, it doesn't feel hectic, but it also doesn't feel static. And that's what I wanted to go for in this patch. So again, if you like it, feel free to download it, use it, modify it, and let me know if this was helpful for you. See you in the next video. Bye.